Hello, thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be taking a look at the full cross stitch. But before we start, make sure you've got clean hands, a good light, preferably one with a daylight bulb, and a small pair of scissors with nice sharp points. Cross stitch is usually worked on this fabric called Ada. The fabrics we use in our kit are mainly 14 count and 16 count. The count is measured in holes per inch, or abbreviated to HPI. So here we have 14 holes per inch, and this is a slightly finer 16 holes per inch. The fabrics don't usually have a front or a back, but in our kits we do use some, like this polka dot fabric, the speckles and the cloudy, which have only the design printed on the front, so it's important to use that side to do your stitching. The Ada in our fabrics has been carefully cut by hand to minimise fraying, and to be honest I never find this a problem. But some people prefer to bind the edge of the canvas with masking tape, or to oversew by hand or using a machine. Obviously if you have a selvage, then this isn't going to be a problem.
Some people prefer to work the cross stitch with the Ada held free, whereas other people like to use a frame of some type. There are these hoop frames. The piece of Ada is simply put on top of one hoop and the second hoop secured on top of it. There are also various types of clip frame on the market, or there are these bar frames. The bar frames are sold in pairs and you simply clip the two pairs together. You can make various sizes of frame with these, and the design is secured with these silk pins. Larger designs might be more conveniently worked using a floor stand of some type. For large designs, a roller frame or scroll frame like these are also useful. The Ada is attached onto the webbing using small running stitches working from the centre outwards. Then tighten up the rollers and secure on the back. This piece of Ada has been correctly secured so that the Ada is protected underneath the rollers rather than going over it. Whatever type of frame you decide to use, if you're going to use one at all, it's important to release the tension on your work when you're not stitching. Also, do keep your fabric clean in between times. For a big project, a pillowcase is ideal for this. And as you're stitching, there are these things called grime guards available, which can keep your piece nice and tidy. Threads used in a cross-stitch kit are called stranded cottons. Some people refer to them as silks or floss. They come pre-sorted on the card. There are two stitch diagrams in our Bothy threads kit. This one shows a cross-stitch only, and this one shows the French knot and back stitch. The roof on the Bothy, for example, is worked in brown, and here you can see the diamond symbol for brown corresponds to the stitch diagram showing the diamonds on the roof. When you start off, I recommend that you start your stitching in the centre of the design. This can easily be found by following the arrows and dashed lines across the cross-stitch diagram. Sometimes the cross-stitch chart is printed over several sheets of paper. In this case, you can either work from them separately, or you might like to cut off one of the margins and to stick them together by using tape, preferably on the back. To find the centre of the Ada, simply fold it into quarters. Often the Ada comes like this in the kits anyway. So, we're going to take one of the pre-cut lengths of stranded cotton to work with. Now this is 6 stranded cotton, which means that each length of thread is made up of 6 smaller strands. To work your cross stitch, we are going to take just one of these strands. Just simply pull it out from the others. Now we are going to fold the 2 cut ends together and thread your needle. The needle in a cross stitch kit is confusingly called a tapestry needle. It just means that it's got a relatively large eye and a blunt tip. The easiest way to thread the needle is to fold the thread over the eye, pinch between the thumb and forefinger, and then slide the eye of the needle over the thread. And now you'll have a loop at one end. For the purpose of this video, we're going to demonstrate by stitching this heart on a larger block Ada using a thicker thread. Here I have the needle threaded and the loop at the other end. I simply come through from the back, take the stitch diagonally back through, and as I go back through, I'm going to go through that loop, anchoring my first stitch in place. This is called the loop method of starting off, and now we have a half cross stitch. Then I simply make the other arm of the cross stitch, and there's our first full cross stitch. In fact, when we are filling a larger area with cross stitch, a better way of working is to work a row of the half cross stitches first. So, for example, if I were working this heart, I need a central row of 6 cross stitches. You could start dead in the middle, but it's more convenient to count back 3 squares and start off here, then working my 6 half cross stitches one way. Chrissy is working these with her right hand, but for left-handers like me, the technique is just the same. Try to keep the tension even, so don't pull your stitches too tightly. It doesn't really matter which way your first diagonal slopes, but it's important to make sure that they all lie the same way. So, here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 half stitches. And now we'll complete these. As you work through the Ada, try to take the needle vertically down through the blocks and take it cleanly through the holes. Some people call this stab stitch. So here we are, our first row of 6 full cross stitches. Now, referring back to our stitch diagram, we can see that underneath our row of 6 we've got another row of 6. So move down here and make another row of 6 stitches, ensuring that the first diagonal lies the same way as the first diagonal in the earlier row. When you finish working an area, simply run the thread through the stitches on the back of the fabric, cut off the ends close to the stitches. You might find it useful to use a highlighter to mark off the area that you have stitched. If you finish off halfway through a row, it's a very good idea and helps you find your place quickly when starting off again. Sometimes cross stitch is worked using only one strand of thread. In this case, you can't use the loop method to start. Simply take one strand and run it through the back of some previous stitches. These are shown on the stitch diagram by the shaded symbols. So the soil area here is worked in one strand, whereas these motifs are worked in 2 strands, as shown by the normal symbols. Thanks for watching and happy cross stitching!